a professor of cognitive computing at Goldsmiths, University of London, and author of over 170 publications and 2 books on AI research, cognitive computing, and the philosophy of AI. His talk will discuss the limitations of artificial neural networks and common assumptions about AI's capabilities and its future role in society. So please welcome Professor J. Mark Bishop.
Hello, bear with me while I share my screen. Well, hi, and thanks for the invitation to speak to you today. Artificial intelligence has made remarkable progress, reaching grandmaster and even superhuman performance across various tasks, from perfect information games like Go to imperfect information scenarios like StarCraft. And these technological developments from AI labs have enabled widespread applications in the business world, with AI fast becoming a ubiquitous brand tag. However, a concerning corollary is that when AI systems fail, an autonomous vehicle crashes, a chatbot exhibits racist behavior, or an automated credit scoring system discriminates based on gender or race, there are often significant financial, legal, and brand consequences, and the incident rapidly becomes international news. As Judea Pearl sees it, the root cause of such mistakes is that all the impressive achievements of deep learning amount to little more than just curve fitting. The key, according to Pearl, is to replace reasoning by association with causal reasoning, the ability to infer causes from observed phenomena. This point was echoed by Gary Marcus and Ernest Davis in their New York Times piece when they wrote, "We need to stop building computer systems that merely get better and better at detecting statistical patterns in datasets, and start building computer systems that, from the moment of their assembly, innately grasp 3 basic concepts: time, space, and causality." In this talk, however, highlighting what in 1949 Gilbert Ryle called a category mistake, an alternative explanation for AI errors is offered. It's not so much that computational machinery cannot grasp causality, but that machinery qua computation cannot understand anything at all. Ever since C.P. Snow's Reed Lecture of 1959, there has been a general perception amongst educated people of life lived in 2 cultures. On the one hand, the departments of the arts and humanities dealing with the living and the experiential in a world of meaningful cognition, information as semantics, communication through language, signs and interpretations. And on the other, the sciences and mathematics dealing with the non-living and mechanical in the world of artificial cognition, information as statistics, communication through signals, energy, forces, and matter, all governed by strict laws. In this light, these 2 cultures live in enforced ontological separation. They literally do not share the same reality. Conversely, modern approaches to cognitive science, emphasizing the body and its interactions with environment, language, and society, offer new tools with which to bridge this cultural gap, and in so doing, open up a new shared reality, a reality of neurons interacting in the brain interacting with the body interacting with the world, language, and society. This radical, holistic approach to cognition focuses on the recent development of 4 research themes in cognitive science, the so-called 4 E's: the embodied, the inactive, the embedded, and the ecological, each of which has its own vibrant research program, but which also come together to form a larger, coherent, transdisciplinary whole. In this talk, I will review an old argument which undermines the idea of mind as mere computational mathesis, either cognitivist or connectionist, and contrast these ideas with more recent cognitive science, wherein mind is fundamentally coextensive with life. Well, we can view artificial intelligence as the science and engineering of making machines do clever things, from playing chess to driving a car. And if we align the birth of artificial intelligence with Alan Turing's first computer chess program in 1948, the field is now almost 80 years old. And having worked in AI for around 40 years, almost half its lifetime, I've witnessed fashions and fads come and go. But the current excitement around generative AI and large language models is literally unprecedented. And this is because AI is no longer merely solving toy problems in the lab, but is reaching out into the commercial world in a way that promises to disrupt all our lives. In this heady climate, it currently seems as though there's nothing about the human mind that cannot be replicated or bettered by computation. The appropriately programmed computer really is a mind, genuinely possessing mental states and behaving at least as intelligently as humans. Furthermore, due to Moore's law and the increasing sophistication and self-improvement of AI systems, some now believe we may soon approach a technological singularity in the history of the race, beyond which human affairs as we know them literally cannot continue.
I think we should be very careful about artificial intelligence. If I were to guess at what our biggest existential threat is, it's probably that. So we need to be very careful with artificial intelligence. I'm increasingly inclined to think that there should be some regulatory oversight at maybe at the national and international level, just to make sure that we don't do something very foolish. I mean, with artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. You know all those stories where there's the guy with the pentagram and the holy water, and he's like, yeah, you sure you can control the demon? Doesn't work out.
So, with modern generative AI and large language models, have we one AI to rule them all? Since 2023, OpenAI, Meta, and Google have all launched features for their AI chatbots that allow them to act as AI personal assistants. Autonomous AI agents capable of generating text and copy, summarizing emails, and performing complex calculations on spreadsheets and databases, etc. However, it didn't take long before these AI PAs were shown to fabricate and hallucinate. Indeed, according to New York Times columnist Kevin Roose, Google's Bard AI PA constructed an entire correspondence from him that never actually took place. In addition, the overarching threat of copyright infringement looms over users of large language model technology, as is evidenced by the ongoing legal case currently in its discovery phase, brought by the New York Times against Microsoft and OpenAI for copyright infringement in training their generative AI systems. To indemnify users of its technology against this and similar legal cases around copyright, in November 2023, Microsoft announced our new Copilot copyright commitment. As customers ask whether they can use Microsoft's Copilot services and the output they generate without worrying about copyright claims, we are providing a straightforward answer. Yes, you can. And if you are challenged on copyright grounds, we will assume responsibility for the potential legal risks involved. However, when sensitive corporate and personal data becomes accessible through AI PAs, the stakes are raised exponentially, as future hackers could deploy attacks like prompt injection to manipulate AI PAs and force them to engage in seriously deleterious corporate actions, from triggering illegal payments to revealing sensitive and unauthorized information. In this context, the widespread adoption of AI personal assistants promises serious cyber risks for both businesses and individuals, with no simple solution in sight. For example, it's long been known that prompt injection attacks can force large language models to produce deeply toxic output, racist, homophobic, Islamophobic, misogynist, etc., with no known mitigation. Indeed, the UK's National Cyber Security Centre was prompted to issue a warning on precisely this issue. And this has profound implications for business applications, as serious brand damage can all too easily ensue when AI goes wrong. Indeed, Microsoft's previous experience with chatbots perhaps offers an opposite lesson from history. Microsoft's Zhao chatbot was designed to function as an 18-year-old female AI companion intended to form meaningful emotional connections with her users. With over 660 million active users spending an average of 23 conversation turns per engagement, by 2018, Zhao was the world's most popular social chatbot. After this success, Microsoft re-engineered Zhao into Tay, a chatbot aimed at 18 to 24-year-olds in the US market. However, on March the 23rd, 2016, less than 24 hours after Tay's unveiling as a Twitter experiment in conversational understanding, a series of malicious interactions corrupted this innocent AI child, causing Tay to spout racist, homophobic, and anti-Semitic nonsense.
Microsoft's AI Twitter bot Tay is racist and down with genocide. Microsoft's new artificial intelligence chatbot had an interesting first day of class after Twitter's users taught it to say a bunch of racist things. The verified Twitter account called Tay was launched on Wednesday. The bot was meant to respond to users' questions and emulate casual comedic speech patterns of a typical millennial. According to the Einsteins at Microsoft, Tay was designed to engage and entertain people where they connect with each other online through casual and playful conversation. The more you chat with Tay, the smarter she gets, so the experience can be more personalized for you. Enter trolls, and Tay quickly turned into an N-bomb dropping racist, spouting white supremacist propaganda and calling for genocide. Tay turned into quite the Hitler fan as well. After the enormous backfire, Microsoft took Tay offline for upgrades and is deleting some of the more offensive tweets. Tay hopped off the Twitter sphere with the message, "See you soon, humans. Need sleep now. So many conversations today. Thanks."
Well, not deterred, Microsoft engineers released a second version just a week later. However, this also exhibited similar bad behaviors, leading Tay to be taken permanently offline amidst huge reputational damage to Microsoft. Well, clearly in 2016, Microsoft engineers could not build an AI chatbot that understood language. But with the advent and adoption of large language models, has the landscape changed? In April 2023, Elon Musk said ChatGPT was being trained to be politically correct and announced plans for his new AI company, xAI, to develop TruthGPT, an AI that tries to understand the nature of the universe by seeking maximum truth, whatever that might be. TruthGPT was later renamed Grok, after the Martian term coined by Robert Heinlein in his 1961 book Stranger in a Strange Land to describe a form of understanding. And on April the 4th, 2024, an update to X's Explore page included news summaries entirely written by Grok, a task previously assigned to human curators.
Man, Elon is having some serious problems with his AI service on X, and it's getting a little out of hand. Let me explain what's happening. Little background story on X, formerly known as Twitter. Elon is using his Grok AI service, which is very much similar to ChatGPT, to analyze and produce news headlines, which sounds on the face of it pretty cool. Problem is, when he bought Twitter, he immediately fired all his human editors on the news side. So anyone just checking to making sure that these are real news stories before publishing them to the news or trend side of X or Twitter has been gone. So the whole thing is running by AI at the moment. This has been leading to some very funny headlines and things, such as when we had the eclipse, the AI got confused and said the sun had some odd behaviors and experts are baffled. This is because it's analyzing just thousands and thousands of tweets, and some of those are obviously going to be jokes. The funny example actually happened last night with Klay Thompson of the Warriors bricking all his shots in an important NBA playoff game, and Grok got completely confused by comments about bricking and thought clay went on some kind of vandalism spree with bricks, which is obviously not true. We all got a great laugh. But the problem is this kind of tool is very dangerous for geopolitical situations. For example, we have this headline pop up on X, which said the Prime Minister of India, Modi, was ejected from the government. This would be massive news if this was true, but of course it was false. It was picking up some conspiracy theories on X, and this has pissed off a lot of people in his party. The most serious one that came out just a couple of weeks ago before Iran actually attacked Israel was this headline that said Iran had attacked Tel Aviv specifically, which was not true. I don't know how it got that idea, but it was very serious. Imagining algos from different news services actually picking this up as a legitimate headline, this could have led to an actual war. So you can see how this becomes something funny to actually dangerous very quickly.
So why, given all the investment, the billions of dollars that have been invested in AI and large language models, do such egregious behaviors continue to occur? Well, I contend that the fundamental reason Tay and Grok-like issues continue to surface, and always will, and that large language models continue to hallucinate, is because AI systems do not understand the meaning of the signals they so adroitly manipulate. And to understand why, we need to review John Searle's seminal Chinese room argument. In the late 1970s, Shanker Nabelson's AI lab at Yale secured funding from the Sloan Foundation to host a visiting speaker program, and subsequently invited the American philosopher John Searle to speak on cognitive science. Before the visit, Searle had read Shanker Nabelson's book, Scripts, Plans, Goals, and Understanding, an Inquiry into Human Knowledge Structures, and on arriving at the lab, met a group of researchers who'd engineered AI systems which, they claimed, actually understood stories purely on the basis of this theory. Now, not complex tales like War and Peace, mind you, but simple stories of the form, Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. And these programs are able to respond appropriately to questions about such stories. Now, not complex philosophical questions such as what is the nature of causality and responsibility in the events that transpired between Jack and Jill, but rather more modest inquiries along the lines of who went up the hill? Answer, Jack went up the hill. And why did Jack go up the hill? Answer, to fetch a pail of water. Now, Searle was so surprised that anyone might seriously entertain the idea that programs, however complex, might genuinely understand stories, that even prior to arriving at Yale, he'd come up with a thought experiment that subsequently became known as the Chinese room argument, which he contends disproves the thesis. On the bottom left of the screen, there is a cartoon depicting the essence of Searle's argument. An old argument now, which purports to show why the syntactical manipulation of signals, by that I mean uninterpreted symbols, can never give rise to semantics and genuine understanding. Searle describes a situation where he is locked in a room and presented with a large batch of papers all covered in Chinese ideographs that he doesn't understand. Indeed, Searle doesn't even recognize the marks as being Chinese ideographs, as distinct from, say, Japanese, or simply meaningless patterns. Later, Searle is given a second batch of Chinese symbols, together with a set of rules, this time in English, that describe an effective method, an algorithm, for correlating the second batch with the first purely by their shape. Finally, Searle is given a third batch of Chinese symbols together with another set of rules in English to enable him to correlate the third batch with the first two. These rules additionally instruct Searle how to return certain sets of shapes, Chinese symbols, in response to certain symbols present in this third batch. Now, unbeknownst to Searle, the people outside the room call the first batch of Chinese symbols the script, the second batch the story, and the third questions about the story, And the symbols Searle returns, they call answers to questions about the story. And the set of rules that John Searle is obeying, they call the program. So the Chinese room argument seems to demonstrate how Searle can follow a set of rules, and that means respond appropriately to questions posed to him in Chinese without, as he remains a monoglot English speaker throughout, ever understanding a single word of the language. Now, since its publication in 1980, a huge literature has developed around the Chinese room argument, such as John Preston and I engaged in the book shown on the right of the screen, and with very mixed opinions as to its success. Following Searle, however, I believe that much of the confusion regarding the Chinese room argument is the fundamental distinction between epistemic concerns, knowledge about a particular cognitive state, and ontological, the nature of being in a particular cognitive state. In other words, I suggest that there can be a phenomenal component to understanding. Riffing off the work of Frank Jackson, does Mary, who's been spent all her early life as a neuroscientist locked in a room with only black and white text describing how the visual system operates, learn something new when the door is finally opened and she's released into a world of colour and sees the ineffable red of a rose for the very first time? Well, the view that intelligence and the mind is rooted solely in ratiocination and computation is a relatively modern one, and one that has not gone unchallenged. In my 2021 Frontiers paper, Artificial Intelligence is Stupid and Causal Reasoning Will Not Fix It, I highlighted 3 a priori arguments that, controversially, purport to demonstrate, firstly, that computation cannot realise understanding, from the argument from John Searle that I've just reviewed with you. Secondly, that computation cannot realise mathematical insight, from the Nobel Prize winner Sir Roger Penrose. And thirdly, that computation cannot realise raw sensation or feeling. And that's from my Dancing with Pixies reductio, my own minor contribution to these debates. And this analysis certainly struck a chord. With currently in excess of 100,000 views and downloads, the paper has enjoyed more views than 99% of all articles published across all Frontiers journals. And Frontiers, partly owned by the publishers of Nature, is a reasonably respected academic publisher. And like the terrorist who only needs to evade security forces wants to achieve her goal, if only one of these arguments is correct, a deep and permanent ontological rift is exposed between computation and semantics. As John Searle presciently summarized in Minds, Brains and Programs, because the formal symbol manipulations by themselves don't have any intentionality. In the linguistic jargon, they have only syntax, but no semantics. Thank you. I'm finished, host.
Thank you very, very much for that wonderful presentation. I understand that you have to leave us quite quickly. So
I have a few questions though, if there's any questions.
yeah, okay.
We've got five or so minutes.
So does anybody have a question about this presentation? Or AI language learning models, large language models in general? Okay, simply objectiveness and subjectiveness, question mark?
Sorry, is there a question?
It's just objectiveness and subjectiveness. Is there a difference when it comes to AI?
I think one of the points, and this riffs off some remarks from other thinkers in the field, particularly Stefan Harned, in his review of Professor Luciano Floridi's Philosophy of Information. He makes the point that there's often a phenomenal component to understanding. This observation really hit home for me in my own education, thinking back 50 years to when I was first taught calculus. I was initially taught a rote technique for differentiating a quadratic, for argument's sake, and I didn't understand why I had to do whatever the rules said. And then suddenly at one point, the teacher managed to get through to me and understand what was going on. And there was a feeling that understanding encompasses. And there's a whole psychological literature I've since discovered that embraces this very strongly and examines the psychological components of understanding and how that affects our grasping of concepts. So my own contribution to this debate centers around a claim I make that computation can never realize feeling, unless a vicious form of panpsychism is true, wherein everything is conscious of everything. And that most scientists, although there might be spiritual reasons why you might be drawn to panpsychism, it's not usually considered a scientific worldview. It's not falsifiable, to use Popper's famous phrase. So I believe that the dancing with pixies reductio that I alluded to in the last slide is a fairly watertight refutation of why computers will never feel. Why, if you look, any of you have seen the Terminator, why the Terminator couldn't possibly have hated Sarah Connor. It might have acted as though it hated, but it didn't actually feel any personal hate within its metallic body. So yeah, I think there is the subjective objective difference is germane to this argument, and I contend that computation, no AI system will ever have that human or indeed, animal for that matter, that living subjectivity. And it's interesting, I think, for me, I spend a lot of time studying cognitive science, and it seems to me that most people, when I give talks to AI people around the world, most people are still basing their theory, insofar as they have one at all, and many AI scientists are just not interested in theoretical basis for what they do, but insofar as they have a theory, they're drawing on the work of philosophers like Hilary Putnam in the 1960s, who came up with functionalism as the theory of mind. And there's been 60 years of progress in cognitive science since then, to which most people in AI sadly are utterly ignorant. And I think the new cognitive science, as we like to call it, very much emphasizes the subjective and the lived body in an experiential world, and the importance of language in shaping our perceptions, going back to the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis.
Brilliant. And how can AI-driven semantic analysis improve language learning efficiency and comprehension?
I wouldn't like to respond on that. That's beyond my area of expertise, I'm afraid.
Well, thank you for your honesty.
AI and what AI can and can't achieve, but that's where I come. I'm an AI practitioner who's taught cognitive science and AI for a long time, rather than education and pedagogy and linguistics.
Katie would like to know, how confident are you that AI will never learn to truly understand?
All my life I've been making these claims with hopefully ever increasing nuance and sophistication as I've engaged with people around the world. John Preston and I in 2002 published the book on John Searle's Chinese room argument, which was 21 years after we aimed to have it published in 2001, 21 years after Searle published the argument. And we engaged with, in that book, it has 20 essays, 10 from leading cognitive scientists and 10 from leading, and I mean absolutely leading philosophers from around the world. And as editing that book, I read nothing that made me doubt that Searle was completely correct. And one of the reasons why I chose to discuss Searle's argument today, which is actually quite old, as opposed to looking at what Roger Penrose has written or what I've done, which is a little bit more modern, is twofold. Firstly, I think for non-specialists, it's easier to get an intuition as to what the modal force of the argument is. And secondly, I don't think even now most people in AI have taken Searle's argument fully on board. They tend to think, if they think about it at all, that it pertains to work that's particularly targets Shanker Nabelson's work, which was about looking at the shapes, imagining programs that looked at correlations between shapes. But actually, John Searle's argument is a lot deeper, and he realised that when he wrote it. And if you read the paper very carefully, which sadly very few people do, you'll see that Searle's argument pertains to any computer program. So it pertains just as accurately to large language models and generative AI as it did to the work of Shankar and Abelson. So if his argument is correct, it's correct against all forms of new AI. And my own perspective, having worked in this area for 40 years, is that Searle's argument is absolutely correct. And I also think this undermines why these LLMs continue to hallucinate and say ridiculous things, because they understand nothing. It's not that they understand a little bit, they understand nothing. And one of the philosophically, to me, interesting things is just how amazing it is to get a bit of engineering that understands nothing behave so amazingly realistic, even though it doesn't understand an iota of what it's doing. And that, to me, is a very interesting philosophical question about language. You know, you can have an interaction with an LLM, and it's, you know, it's undoubtedly passed the Turing test. You would think if you were interacting with a human that the thing really understood, but I don't believe that they do.
Oh, well, thank you for answering the questions, and thank you for your time. I won't keep you any longer because I know you have to rush off. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.